Welcome back. The use of drones in the U.S. and worldwide is causing all sorts of problems for our allies and, of course, worries about privacy issues here. But at the same time, drones have become a very effective tool in the war on terror.
The United States should end the secrecy surrounding its drone campaign in Pakistan and bring those responsible for illegal strikes to justice, Amnesty International said Tuesday. The rights group said there appeared to be no justification for 2 drone attacks in northwest Pakistan last year, one of which killed a 68-year-old grandmother as she picked vegetables. The U.S. has carried out nearly 400 drone attacks in Pakistan's restive tribal districts along the Afghan border since 2004, killing between 2,500 and 3,600 people, according to the London-based Bureau of Investigative Journalism. Washington says they are an important and effective tool in the fight against militants like the Taliban and al-Qaeda, who have strongholds in the tribal areas. But critics say hundreds of innocent civilians have died in the strikes. Amnesty called on the U.S. to investigate publicly all cases where drone strikes may have caused deaths unlawfully, and to prosecute those responsible where there was enough evidence. Though the Pakistani government publicly protests against drone strikes, previous administrations are known to have given them their tactic blessing. On Wednesday, President Barack Obama and Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif have met at the White House to discuss a range of sensitive issues and get U.S.-Pakistan relations back on track. President Barack Obama says he wants to prevent security cooperation from being a source of tension between the U.S. and Pakistan.
We talked about security and the concerns that both of us have about senseless violence, terrorism, and extremism. And we agreed that we need to continue to find constructive ways to partner together, ways that respect Pakistan's sovereignty, that respect the concerns of both countries. And I'm optimistic that we can continue to make important strides in moving forward.
Pakistan and the United States have a strong ongoing counter-terrorism cooperation. We have agreed to further strengthen this cooperation. I also brought up the issue of drones in our meeting, emphasizing the need for an end to such strikes.
The strikes have been a sore point in relations between the two countries. Obama did not mention drones in his remarks to reporters, but he said fighting terrorism is a challenge and isn't easy.
Now back joining us to discuss about where we are and where we're going with regard to this very important issue. We're joined again by Dede Banke, an aide to President George W. Bush, also Jose Lopez, professor of physics at Seton Hall University, Stephen Bronner, Professor Stephen Bronner from Rutgers, who's a political science professor, and on Skype right now we have Dr. Michael Boyle, who's a professor of political science as well at LaSalle University. All of you, welcome back. Let's talk about drones. This is a sticky issue. It continues to the drones continue to fly over the Middle East, continue to fly over Afghanistan and Pakistan and so on, and Iraq. And there have been complaints by governments there. We saw a moment ago from the Pakistani Prime Minister. Why is it continuing if our allies don't want this to happen?
I don't think that's too complicated. At some level, allies like Pakistan feel themselves threatened by various groups. Wouldn't I? I would, yeah, I would, but I wouldn't respond this way. I think it's counterproductive.
How would you respond?
Because, well, hang on. The first reason is why it's counterproductive. I don't think there's any better recruitment tool for Al-Qaeda, not just in Pashtun in Pakistan, but Al-Qaeda is a transnational organization. I don't think there's any better recruitment tool than drones. It's an attack on sovereignty. It shows a certain arrogance. I mean, you can just imagine if there were drones flying around the United States.
Which there are.
Which there are. And the double standard is outrageous, and the people who are supportive of it would be the first to be morally outraged if it went the other way.
You make a very good point.
And plus, I
would agree with that, but one thing I would say is I think it is strategically ineffective, but one of the reasons it continues is because these governments actually sometimes ask the United States to use the drones. So if you look at a case like Yemen, Yemen's government has actually called on American drones to take out its own enemies. In Pakistan, the Washington Post reported this week that Pakistan had signed a number of protocols and had been briefed on the drones program. So part of the reason the U.S. does it is in some cases it's actually being asked by these countries to use drones on their territory. And what's ironic about that is that they actually create some distance between the United States when it comes out in public and condemn the drone strikes, although in some levels they're saying very different things behind closed doors.
So if governments are asking for us for our assistance and we're helping them, when they ask it not to happen, why are we continuing to do it?
I think Professor Boyle is very much on target. I would just add this. The governments that are asking us to do it, let's put it this way, they're not exactly exemplars of democracy. These are precisely the governments that the United States has had trouble with and has ruined American standing in the region now for decades.
All right, well,
I just want to add one thing, because I think the way to deal with these kind of groups, you asked me that before, is actually political marginalization. I think the military solution is just outdated and doesn't speak to where we are today.
I could see Dee Banky jumping out of her seat right now.
Yeah, well, good luck with that. I'm sorry, but I really don't think that works. I think the drone program is good. I mean, you know, and these governments have asked for the help, and we have done this, and drones are much better than dropping great big bombs.
But Pakistan is asking us to stop.
Well, okay, apparently it's a moving target, because before they were asking us to help, or quietly, or in public, or who knows. We really don't know everything. Our commander-in-chief knows more than we do. But I do think drones are good, and having that technology and having that one up on the others, hey, you know what? It's better to do that than to, I mean, there's less collateral damage with drones than there are with dropping gigantic bombs.
Some would argue that point. We're going to talk about the technology in a moment with Professor Lopez.
It's not clear that that's actually true. The administration hasn't released any of the figures. Most of what we get from the Bureau of Investigative Journalism is taken from journalist sources that aren't entirely accurate. What we know is that there's been 3,000 people killed in Pakistan. Some of them have been al-Qaeda. Some of them have been in local Pakistani militant networks. In those cases, those local Pakistani militant networks are now turning against the United States. The Times Square bombing was done by a guy called Faisal Shahzad. Faisal Shahzad in part did this, and in his court filings he said the reason he launched the attack on Times Square was objection over the drone strikes.
All right, Professor,
so they're only a good thing if they don't create seething discontent in the population.
All right, Professor, let me hold you right there. Let's talk about the technology, because this is fascinating stuff, and that's why we have a professor of physics here today, because a lot of us sort of understand how it works. It's remote control like you would a video game, and I'm simplifying it, and correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're right.
You remote control a small plane like you would on a video game, and a lot of people have this hobby that they actually fly these planes for sport, but this is serious business, obviously. They're weaponized, they have bombs on them, and you don't need a pilot, so nobody's in danger. And I think most Americans are comfortable with that because no one's in danger, and the person controlling it is in a room in Orlando somewhere. For lack of a better description, again, I'm simplifying it, playing a video game. Playing a video game.
Yes.
All right, is that technology where we are now the latest, or do you see it even getting better than this?
It's gonna get much better. I mean, than what we have currently. But we've raised generations of video game players, and they know how to play with these games. So they see it as a game. Now, what's happening within our military, something that people have been talking about, is the psychological effects of these toys, if you will, as what they are to them. They're playing these games and killing real people, and that's kind of come back and been causing some issues with this type of weapon that we have. Yes, the collateral damage has been limited compared to huge bombs that are dropped on people, but there's been problems with our own folk that are working with these weapons.
Well, we've gone from drones to maybe a fleet of drones, and maybe you don't need fighter pilots anymore.
Right.
Where are we somewhere down the road where we have robot fighters who are actually on the ground fighting, and you don't need men or women to fight?
That's what I was going to say. The Holy Grail is actually autonomous robots.
And you see that happen?
Terminators, yes, absolutely. I mean, it's moving that way, absolutely. If you look at the Department of Defense and the work they're doing in robotics and stuff like that, it's moving absolutely in that direction.
How far away are we from that?
we might be quite a few years away, but it's hard to tell.
10, 20?
The DOD is not going to let you or me or any of us know in the public how long it's away. But
let's get to the issue of drones over the United States, which is troubling, I think, for every American. Right now, the government says we're using it for surveillance. Police departments can buy them now. I saw one on TV the other day the size of a hummingbird that can look through your window. Where does that end? And are you comfortable? We'll start with DD Banky here.
Absolutely not. That, I think, that's where you draw the line.
Well, how do you draw the line if it's already being done?
Because we're trying to take out Al-Qaeda. That's different than spying on our own Americans.
But it's a slippery slope. You're saying it's okay overseas, and that's fine.
Again, back to the NSA, it's like, we figure out who our friends are and who they're not. Well, I'm sorry, I don't think she'll be spying on Grandma over in Toledo. But if it's...
But it could happen.
It could happen, and it shouldn't happen. I don't think that's good at all.
How do you stop it?
What do you mean?
How do you stop?
Well, I think that's legislation.
I mean, that's true.
Everybody smiled here because good luck with that.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, but you got to start somewhere.
It's happening. There are cameras everywhere.
Yes.
I'm driving my car here in New Jersey, and there's cameras looking at me constantly.
Yeah.
They know when I left home and came to the studio. So I mean, if they wanted to know that, I mean, it all goes into the greater big, as we were talking about, it goes into huge databases. And unless I've done something or there's some danger I pose to the community, it's going to be.
We have about 30 seconds. Professor Brana, do you see is there a politician, a president, a speaker, someone who would step forward and say, look, we have to draw the line. This legislation has to be in effect so we're not spied on at home. Is that possible?
I wanted to say something different, which is the collateral damage issue. 3,000 people is not chopped liver. How many people died in 9/11? But it's our people, so we go nuts.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a difference.
No, there's not a
There's
difference.
a huge difference.
From a humanitarian standpoint
Sorry.
and from the way we're looked at by the rest of the world, all this does is rehabilitate a double standard and what the late Senator William Fulbright called the arrogance of power.
Okay, we want to thank everybody on the panel, including via Skype, Professor Michael Boyle. We appreciate you coming down. Thank you, sir. And
Thank you.
all of you, we're going to take a break right now. When we come back, the sad and seemingly endless string of school shootings in the U.S. What must we do to protect our children and teachers when we come back?